everybody, and welcome to another amazing video of DIY investing. We've been talking extensively about this next coming alt season, how Bitcoin making a new all-time high is directly going to impact when the Bitcoin dominance tops, and we're currently seeing all of those things. Bitcoin's into new all-time highs. We've confirmed the breakout. Altcoins are now starting to reverse, and as altcoins are reversing, Bitcoin dominance is at a topping point. I have all of the charts that I need to be breaking down today so that you guys can be aware of what is taking place over the next few months, because I got a lot of confidence. We're all about to make a significant amount of money, and this is going to be true alt season for the first time in our cycle. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit that like, comment, and subscribe button. Without further ado, let's jump right into this amazing video today. Alrighty everybody, here we are to start off today's video, and I'm so excited to be bringing this update because I'm telling you guys right now, everything that we need to see for true alt season is taking place. Bitcoin is breaking out, the altcoins are breaking out, and all of the most important indexes that we're going to be following are showing the exact same correlations. Now the big thing that we need to be talking about, I talked a lot about over the last couple months, why this next breakout into new all-time highs is so important. And it really revolves around the last consolidation that we've had over pretty much the last year. At this prior all-time high at 65K and 69K, we started our resistance. When we had all of the institutions that were flocking to buy Bitcoin around the ETFs and stuff, Bitcoin went from 25K all the way to 75K, and we revisited this same resistance level. And we sat here for about 6 to 8 months consolidating, maintaining support and resistance right below and above this level, consolidating before we get a breakout, more or less. And then I told you guys that once we break out of this level, that's really the go-ahead for new all-time highs in price discovery. And we ended up breaking out of that level. But as quick as we broke out, we pretty much pulled back and revisited right back down onto those same support levels. So we had resistance of our prior all-time high as well as the peak that we made when we had all of the ETF hype. And then when we broke out, all it was us just retesting that same level. And so what I've been saying for the last couple months is, once Bitcoin breaks out and makes another new all-time high, that's the point where we're going to really start the parabolic push. Because what this was, I was thinking that maybe this was going to be the one where we finally went super parabolic, but we ended up pulling back and getting a retest. So everybody just had the last 6 months to be able to get back in, to be able to add to more positions, to be able to really focus in on what your investments are for this cycle and get accumulation into them. Because in my opinion, all of this was a blessing in disguise because it just gave us more time to accumulate our positions and get ready for what is inevitably going to come. But as you guys can see, Bitcoin has successfully made a new all-time high. We've broken out of not only our prior all-time high, but we've retested that and then broken from that high as well. So we're now in my opinion, true price discovery. This is the most important part of the cycle because I've told you guys extensively, once Bitcoin enters price discovery is where all of the profit really starts to flood into the market. And we can see that every single one of our cycles. Now, this cycle's been a little bit different, but it's not so different that we're going to need to be worrying about everything. But in the last cycle, we had such an instant kind of breakout into price discovery, and all of that was fueled really around all of the stimulus that happened. But it was in that last cycle that we followed a little bit of a different tune. We had this downtrending resistance, and we had hit off of it a number of different times. But once we finally got that breakout outside of it, this acted as a spring-loaded bounce before the real upside of the market set in. And I think that a lot of this upside set in so much quicker. This was September of 2020, so we're already sitting like 6 to 8 months past that point, and we still haven't even seen any sort of price action like what Bitcoin did in 2021. So when we're looking at this, it's important to understand that the time frames are a little different as far as, you know, where we're at. It's taken a little bit longer to get to this point. But the big reason I think there was so much a quicker pace in the last cycle was because we printed so much money and lowered those interest rates. I don't think it would have done it as quick if we would have done all of that. Now, looking at this current cycle, we're at a different point, obviously. We didn't get that instant new all-time high breakout like what we saw in the last cycle, but what we got was a retest of our prior all-time high of the last cycle, and now we're getting continuation from there. So in my eyes, it's all the same. This little breakout and retest in our last cycle is the same as this breakout and retest in the all-time highs. Obviously, it's not a triangle that we're breaking out from. It's just your classic market cycle, but I think it's all the same thing. When we saw Bitcoin run from 10K to 65K shortly after that breakout, I do think that this is the same thing that's going to be happening for Bitcoin today. And what we're going to be looking at, if we overlay this chart, in my opinion, we're going to be looking at a lot of the same correlations as what happened when Bitcoin first ran all the way to 65K. It makes the most sense to me considering this cycle is a little bit different. We have the institutions, we have the big money players. I don't think that we're going to get some big double top correction going into this cycle. In fact, what I've always believed was that once Bitcoin retested this all-time high and started to run, we would pretty much just complete this entire cycle all in one big move. And that's still along the lines of what I'm anticipating. I think that whatever Bitcoin peaks at in this cycle is most likely just going to happen all in one big go. And don't get me wrong, guys, we could still see little pullbacks. If Bitcoin pulls back and we see 20, 15% drops, we're going to see a lot of pullbacks in the altcoins as well. But for the most part, I am anticipating Bitcoin to just kind of finish its blow off top. This price action to me looks a lot more like 2017, where we ended up developing a lot of the similar type of base, where we had this all-time high, we kind of built this steady uptrend, higher highs and higher lows. Once we went into price discovery, we kind of started to do these same things where we made an impulse, correction, impulse, correct back down, retest that prior high, and then get another move. So this type of price action right here, in my opinion, is almost identical to the price action that we've been seeing inside of Bitcoin up to this point. This higher highs, steady uptrend. In my eyes, now we're finally at the point where things go parabolic. And we know, historically speaking, when Bitcoin enters that big swing of price discovery, that's where the altcoin money is actually going to start to really run, and we can look at true alt season. So when we come over here and actually take a look at the Bitcoin dominance, this is going to be the most important thing that we can look at. We have already been looking at Bitcoin. We know that if Bitcoin's about to be going into another one of these, which I do think it will, that we know that the altcoins are sure to start running as well. When we look at the Bitcoin dominance, we can see a lot of weakness. Since October of 2023, we've had bearish divergence. The RSI has maintained lower highs, and then it was most recently over in here that we're starting to get what looks to be a lower low potential forming. So we've had 4 different reactions at this resistance. The price has always gone higher, yet the RSI continues to show weakness. And on top of all of that, we just got a bearish MACD cross. So the bearish MACD cross is happening. We're also starting to get some red inside of the histogram. So all of this is very bullish for crypto. We're finally starting to see the crack show in the Bitcoin dominance. The strength in that trend is starting to shift. And when that shift takes place, we always see the altcoins run in the biggest way. We can see in the last cycle, it was very similar, where we kind of made one final fake out. And in that final fake out, we can see that we confirmed this big bearish divergence where even though the price made another high, a higher high technically, the RSI showed weakness with this bearish divergence, and this was hidden bearish divergence. In this one, we've just maintained the same level of divergence. It's just maintained since October of 23. But now that we're getting the bearish MACD cross on top of having all of this divergence inside of the RSI, in my eyes, this is the confirmation that we're looking for. What we're going to see is this thing drop, and we're going to see this thing revisit all the way back down to 40%. And in my opinion, that's the best way that we can play the altcoin market for this cycle. We know that if Bitcoin's going to go parabolic, it's going to do something like these to finish up at the end of the year. Every single one of our cycles has done this. If we're looking at where 69 peaked, November 2021. If we're looking at where we peaked in 2018, or 2017, December of 2017. So we know we're looking at the end of this year as being our topping point. So all of the alt season that's going to take place is going to pretty much be happening over the next 6 months. And as that's running, we're going to be looking at the Bitcoin dominance to come all the way back down to 40%. In my opinion, that's where we're going to see the big shakeout take place. And as this shakeout happens, this is where the majority of our altcoin profit is going to be setting in. We're going to be watching Bitcoin dominance go from 65 all the way to 40% in pretty much the same way that it did in the last cycle over in here, although it started at 73%. But here's the thing, guys. The majority of our hype in the last cycle was actually centered around this first big breakout. When Bitcoin went from 10K to 65K, the majority of our altcoin and retail hype took place inside of that move. In fact, this is where the NFTs blew up. This is where DeFi blew up. You had a couple other niche narratives that were kind of taking off inside of this period with different yield farms and stuff like that. But for the most part, it was really DeFi summer. That was the big selling point, and then the NFTs. And then you also had Dogecoin getting pumped from Elon Musk. But all of that took place just here inside of that first big run. In my opinion, we're not going to be getting this double top scenario. I honestly think that because we've waited so long and we're already midway into 2025 at this point, I do think that the rest of the cycle is just going to be Bitcoin pretty much running into price discovery to close out the end of this year. So as that is happening, I am anticipating that all of the hype that's going to be coming in my eyes, we're going to see a lot of institutional hype. So institutional type products are going to do well. AI is really the focal point that I think is going to do the best. And then really memes, obviously, memes are going to continue to do as well, just like they have up to this point. Those are really the three things that I think that there's going to be a ton of value kind of circulating in. So whichever of these narratives are going to take off the most, those are going to be happening inside of this big move right here. And you guys got to keep in note that the same thing happened in the last cycle. Most of the hype was in the 65K move. Even though Bitcoin went for another new all-time high, and so did Solana, so did Phantom, Terra Luna, there were outliers in the cycle that kept going into price discovery, but the vast majority of the hype died at 65K. So when we're looking at this being our first true breakout into price discovery, because we're already in midway of 2025, I don't anticipate we're going to see anything like this. I am anticipating that we're going to pretty much just go straight to this 40% level, and then that's where we're going to want to take our profits. Because here's the thing, in the last cycle, Bitcoin ran to 65%, and then this is what the Bitcoin dominance did. Bitcoin, the 65K run from basically 10K to 65K, Bitcoin dominance went from 73% all the way down to 40%. So this is where we got our alt season, was just inside of this one leg down. So in this cycle, we're going to get that because we're pretty much at these same valuations over in here as our last cycle. So going from 66% all the way down to 40%, that's pretty much the same move that's going to be taking place. So in my opinion, as hype as 65K was, we're going to see that happen all over again. But the question that I have is what happens when we revisit 40%? Because what I'm personally going to be looking to do with my altcoin positions, I'm going to be holding them throughout this drop, but the second that Bitcoin dominance reaches 40% again, retest this same level that we've bounced off of throughout the entirety of the beginning of this cycle, even going back to the all-time low that altcoins made or Bitcoin dominance made back in 2017. This is all of that same level, and in my opinion, Bitcoin dominance is going to come all the way back down and retest the same level once again. And that's where I'm honestly anticipating we could see our first altcoin correction. Maybe Bitcoin dominance is going to run all the way up here to a little over 200K, and we'll see one of those 20% pullbacks like Bitcoin is accustomed to seeing along the way up in the parabolic trend. And it's maybe at that point that we finally get Bitcoin dominance back here, down here at 40% for a little bounce. I do anticipate that we're going to get a bounce. And when we bounce, I anticipate that we're going to be retesting the same kind of consolidation level that we were at the beginning of this cycle. And that's right around this 50% dominance. So we bounced at 40% and we rejected at 50%. And we ping-ponged in here a number of times throughout the last 2 years to begin this cycle before we ended up breaking out. So when we actually revisit this same support level at 40%, I don't think we're just going to smash through it all in one go. I do think that we're going to see a bounce off of that level. So with that being said, when we see that bounce, you know, even though this is only a 10% swing in the dominance, even though we'd only be going from 40% up here to about 48 to 50%, this 10% swing is going to be the swing that, in my opinion, wrecks the altcoins. Because in the last cycle, remember, we had this corrective period, and we have it every cycle. It doesn't matter which one you look at. I can go back to 2017 and show you the same thing. But when the altcoins run into price discovery, this is where all of the euphoria comes in. And then at the end of that euphoria, you have a correction. In the last cycle, it was this great big 60% correction. In 2017, if you guys notice, we made this new all-time high right here. We went from $800 all the way to $3,000. And it was inside of this move the altcoins absolutely melted faces. They outperformed the most. They went the craziest, and it was in that first leg up into price discovery. Then Bitcoin topped. We had this 40% pullback, and altcoins corrected 40 and 50%. And then Bitcoin bottomed at 1,800 and went to 5,000, and altcoins made a lower low. So Bitcoin made another new all-time high, was going further into price discovery, and all of those best returning altcoins made a lower low throughout that period. And it wasn't until when Bitcoin bottomed at 5K and ran all the way from 5K to 20K and peaked at 20K that all of these altcoins that were down here finally finished their blow-off tops. So when we're talking about this current cycle today, you know, we're going to see these midway corrections. They always happen. And in the last cycle, it was 65K. We peaked up here. All those altcoins that ran the hardest pulled back 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%. And then most of them didn't even rebound and go to a new all-time high. So in the last cycle, there was even less profit to go around. This cycle, I have no idea what's going to be the exact way that this plays out. My guess is it's going to lead us into a great big parabolic rally, similar to what I have drawn right here. And as that takes place, Bitcoin dominance is going to go from where we're at all the way down to 40%. And at 40%, we're going to see a 10% bounce. When we see that 10% bounce, well, I'm taking my profit on altcoins at 40%. And I am anticipating that when we bounce, that's going to be the same thing that dropped all of the altcoins in the last cycle. Because remember, when we peaked at 65K, we had this 40% sell-off. Many altcoins got destroyed in that move and then never recovered. The same thing is going to happen again this cycle. But the thing I want you guys to be aware of is it was only a 10% bounce in Bitcoin dominance that wrecked those altcoins in the last cycle, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90%, right? So it only takes a 10% bounce in Bitcoin dominance to completely destroy all of those gains that you made in the altcoin market. So when I'm looking at us holding the same support that we've always held since the beginning of time, even though I have a belief that we could make a new all-time low in Bitcoin dominance, I'm very confident that we're going to see a bounce off of 40%. And this 10% bounce in Bitcoin dominance is going to be the same significance as what the 65K talk was, as well as when we come over here and look at 2017, when we had that big corrective phase in the altcoins over in here when we first went into price discovery. Every cycle we have one, and it's just the way it goes. So when I'm looking at this current cycle, I anticipate that that happens at 40%. I'm selling my crypto at 40%. I'm looking to take my profits on the altcoins specifically. And then during this bounce is when I want to be in cash, because that's where all of the 50 and 60% discounts you're going to be able to get on the market come from. And as we rally back up into this 50% resistance that we've rejected off of a number of different times, that's where I'm going to be looking to take my cash, pivot back into the markets, and look to potentially ride out one more all-time low, a new all-time low in Bitcoin dominance and price discovery for the altcoins. I don't know if we're going to get it. I do lean towards the idea that this is going to be the first cycle since 2017 where we go into a new all-time low in Bitcoin dominance, but it's not guaranteed, and that's why I'm taking my profits at 40%. I do think that regardless whether we make a new all-time low or not, we will bounce off 40%, and I don't want to be holding my altcoins during that bounce because I've seen how just a small 10% bounce in the Bitcoin dominance is during periods where some altcoins are going to correct over 60%, so I don't want to be holding on to those positions. I want to be locking up my profit during this first big downside swing, and then after that move is really where I want to be able to reassess, take my profit, whether I want to go all in, whether I want to take a fraction of it, and just kind of see. That's the way I'm going to be playing the market because I feel like that's the best strategy moving forward. But guys, this is the video I had for you. I wanted to make sure that we're all ready to make some profit. I'm telling you guys right now, this is the fun part of the cycle, the alt season, Bitcoin dominance dropping, everything we've been waiting for over the last 4 or 5 plus years. So if you guys are here, pat yourself on the back, congratulate yourself, because I'm telling you, you're going to make a lot of money as long as you don't mess it up for yourself. Get your positions, hold your positions, take your profit at 40% dominance, and I really think that you're going to do far better than the vast majority of the market out there. So guys, if you did find any value in this video, please do me a favor, hit the like, comment, and subscribe button. Without further ado, I'll catch you guys in the next one. As always, peace out.